Welcome to episode 29 of From the Shed End podcast with myself, T Dot. And as always, I'm joined by Theo. So, how are you doing, Theo?
Good, thank you. Looking forward to the Prem being back on Saturday. So I'm good. And how are you doing?
Yeah, good, good. Bit of time off this afternoon, so it makes a change. But yeah, definitely. Looking forward to the game, like you said. So, just before we crack on with the episodes, obviously our socials. If you're watching live or if you're watching on YouTube, you can see them at the bottom of the screen. But for those who aren't, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, our Twitter is at From the Shed End. Our Instagram is at From the Shed End, underscores in between each of the words. And also you can search for us on YouTube. That's where we need a lot of our help at the moment. We're sort of lacking on subscribers. So all the subscribers that we do have, obviously we appreciate, but anyone who hasn't subscribed and listens to our podcast, subscribe, like our content, and interact with us as well. We like to hear your thoughts as well about the podcast. But yeah, let's go straight to the internationals. We'll start with the internationals. Some good Chelsea scorers this weekend and the midweek as well. Werner obviously being the one who's found his scoring boots, which is good. But also Kai Havertz, Ben Chilwell as well, all scored on the international break. So did you get to catch any of the matches?
I did watch the England Andorra game. I missed the England Hungary yesterday and the Germany games, but I did watch the Chilwell's goal in the England Andorra one, which was good. To be fair, he was in the penalty box at the right time at the right moment, and it kind of felt like he's almost knocking on Tuchel's door now, kind of thinking I should be starting. If Alonso can score, so can I. That's 2 goals now in his last 2 games. I think it was against Southampton and Andorra, and his first international goal for England. So I think he's slowly refining his. I don't want to say refining his form because he never really lost his form. I want to say it was more just a question of getting the game time, but he's slowly getting that game time under his belt now, and I think it's going to be a nice dilemma for Tuchel to have post-international break between Alonso and Chilwell, especially that Alonso also played very well for Spain. I did watch the Nations League games as well. I thought Alonso was fantastic in those games for Spain. So a nice dilemma on Saturday for Tuchel to have between Alonso and Chilwell.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think we've mentioned it before around obviously Thomas Tuchel's going to have him. It's a good headache to have, and I think I've mentioned that before. That it's brilliant that he's got 2 players in form, both of them playing in the same position. But just having that headache is in a way is a good thing. But obviously one player is always going to miss out. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think obviously we'll move on to Brentford shortly, but I think it's going to be interesting who he goes for because, like you mentioned, I watched the Nations League and obviously Alonso played really well, but Ben Chilwell as well. I didn't watch the game against Hungary and I missed Andorra, so I'm talking sort of from watching a few highlights. But he's definitely someone who is knocking on doors. We know what he's capable of. We obviously watched how he played in the Champions League final as well, so it is a shame for Ben Chilwell, but I think, like I've said before, it's just unfortunate that Alonso's come, into great form, and he's obviously keeping Ben Chilwell out the team. And I think for Chilwell, he's doing the right thing. Obviously, he's training well to be selected, and when he gets his chances, he's actually playing really well and at times scoring. We got to see that against Southampton, like you mentioned, and for international. So, very happy for Timo Werner. I think again, a lot of pressure whenever he plays. People are waiting for the mistakes. They're waiting for the sitters to be missed. But he took both of his goals really well. And I missed the Kai Havertz one, but in terms of Werner, he seems to always score and have a better game internationally as opposed to Chelsea. But can you see that form slowly coming into his Chelsea games as well?
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is look at that game against Southampton, and he was the man of the match. He was fantastic in that game, creating chances. Unlucky not to score a second. He was absolutely fantastic on the day, and that's kind of we saw that again against I think it was North Macedonia that they played, and I do remember I think he missed a very easy chance in the reverse fixture against North Macedonia. So it almost goes to show that things are going his way now, and he is finding that form. He is scoring these brilliant goals. I saw the highlights, and those are 2 goals that you wouldn't really thought Timo Werner had that in his locker. That's Bundesliga Timo Werner back again. So if he's able to bring that back to the Prem, then that'll be fantastic. And I actually really hope. I think we'll touch upon it with the Brentford preview. But with Werner's form, I think he should be kept in the team for Saturday. I really think given how he played against Southampton, given how he played with the international and the German national team, then I think he's got every reason to be knocking on Tuchel's door once again and be like, I should be starting on Saturday against Brentford. So he was fantastic, really pleased for him, and I think I mentioned it offline, but it's just great for his confidence as well.
Yeah, and I agree. Let's move straight over to Brentford, because I think it's going to be a key game. I looked online today, which I hate doing, but I did, and it's sort of mixed emotions around. Obviously, we know who the referee is, but a lot of Chelsea fans are saying, we shouldn't be worried about who's refereeing the game. We've got to go out there and play the game, which I agree with. I think it doesn't matter who's officiating the game, because we've still got to put on a good display and play well. But come on, Anthony Taylor is one of those referees who, even if we were 7-0 up and it was 80 minutes, I'm sure he'd find a way for us to lose 8-7. He's that sort of ref, So going into the game, obviously Kante's been rested. Hopefully he should be back. I think he's tested negative for COVID. We've also got Lukaku, who didn't play on Sunday, who came back early to Cobham. He started training back with the team. Obviously, Loftus-Cheek wasn't involved. He was at Cobham. So was Barkley as well. Pulisic is in contention. I think he's back in light training or some form of training. So do you see it now that this is it's obviously a must-win game for us. We can't really go off the back of an international break, which we tend to do. We tend to play really bad after an international break. And this game for me is going to be difficult, because obviously Brentford aren't on an easy game. So what's your thoughts on Brentford?
I'm a huge fan of Brentford. I really, really do like Brentford. I've got a lot of respect for the football club. I think I've shared this on a previous podcast, but they nearly became my employers before COVID. I was invited to a couple of rounds of interviews in their new office, which overlooks their new stadium. And I was sat in an office with two, people interviewing me, and they kind of told me the long-term vision for Brentford Football Club. And that was, their new owner, I think he's called something Varney, and he's the CEO, the owner of the club. And he said, our new owner, he has got this vision of wanting to be in the Premier League in 1 or 2 years' time. And I really wanted this job at the time, so I just sat there and smiled and said, And at the time they were competing with the likes of, I don't know, a very informed, I think Swansea, Leeds, to go up to the Prem. And then I kind of just sat there and smiled. And then a year later, they lost, I think, the playoff final to Fulham. And then the year after, they qualified and they beat, I think, was it Swansea, I think, in the final? I'm not sure who it was. Swansea. And they're in the Prem now. And, really, really interesting football club. Really, I've got a lot of respect for them. They're kind of their money ball approach to the game is quite remarkable. They sell the likes of Ben Rama, Mopai, these players that they bought for nothing, and they sell for big amounts. And then we know how hard it is going away from home to Brentford. We saw that, Liverpool saw that this season. Arsenal saw that on the opening day. It's a really tough fixture. And I think their crowd, especially because it's their first season ever in the Premier League, they're so, behind the team. Tom Frank's a brilliant manager, really brilliant manager. His recruitment is brilliant, bringing a lot of Scandinavian players that he wants at the club. And I'm a big fan of Tony and Mbumo as well. But I think on paper, we should still be winning this game. You mentioned all the players that we have that are back and fit. Reece James as well is back now, I think, from his ankle injury or knee injury, I think it was. And that's a huge boost for us because we know what he's capable of doing, in terms of delivery for Lukaku and players like that. But just saying his name is like saying Voldemort's name, Anthony Taylor. Honestly, I've got some stats here. Chelsea have won 2 of the last 11 matches played with Anthony Taylor as referee. Most recently, the controversial sending off of Reece James against Liverpool. And then 5 penalties have been given against Chelsea in those 11 matches. So it's just like he's got almost an agenda against Chelsea.
Vendetta.
Vendetta, exactly. That's the word. And every time it's almost like the Premier League as well, but Chelsea are top of the league. It's like, what can we do to almost, derail Chelsea's, being top of the league, give them Anthony Taylor as the referee against Brentford. And I don't know, it's just one of those games where you just know, even if things are going well during the game, a bit like the Liverpool first half, something will happen, whether it's a red card, whether it's a penalty, whether it's a controversial VAR decision. And we saw him again in the international break in the Spain-France game. What was he doing? Should he have gone to the screen to look at that, the Mbappe offside?
He was offside.
He was offside, and Koundé's handball, Pogba lunging in already on a yellow. There were so many decisions in that game where you're thinking, like, what are you doing, Anthony Taylor? What are you doing? And to think that this guy's, they see him as the best English referee to officiate these big these big games. It's ludicrous.
It
It's
just shows the standard of refereeing, doesn't it? I mean, you don't
oh
get that across Europe. You know, you look at Spain and Italy, and you know, even somewhere like Norway or Denmark, they've got brilliant officials who officiate the games correctly, and you know, they don't you know, make bad mistakes or massive key mistakes that change the game. And I think you're right. I think, you know, putting Anthony Taylor in charge of a Chelsea game again already this season, we're 8 games into a Premier League, and we've had him twice already in a season. I just think I'm not going to use that as an excuse if we lose. Obviously, you know, we lose, we deserve to lose. I think fair and if we lose fair and square. I mean, if there's a a penalty that isn't a penalty or a red card that isn't a red card, then understandably the ref's got to answer that. But if we just played poorly and it's because of the fact we just didn't play well, I'll take that. But if it's it's outside the area, but he gives Brentford the penalty and Ivan Toney tucks it away, of course I'm going to be I'm going to be pissed off a bit because it's just poor. It's poor refereeing. Shouldn't have that in this. We've got VAR as well, which makes it even worse. VAR is there to stop refs being stupid, and it seems they're working hand in hand. They're just blind leading the blind.
Yeah, it's almost like we're already coming up with the excuses because we know what to expect. But yeah, on paper though, regardless of who the referee is, we should be winning. It's one of those games. I think except maybe if you're playing a Liverpool or Man City this season in the Premier League, it's games you should be winning. When you're looking at the Chelsea squad and the quality we have in that team and the manager as well and the depth as well in the squad, which we always mention. But it's quite a scary fixture. It is a scary fixture. I'm not going to lie. The kind of the form and the chemistry Brentford have with their fans at the moment, and they're in this kind of moment where, especially playing from home, like I mentioned, where the whole crowd is behind them. I try to get tickets for the game. I literally was the last day I was wanting to go to. It's not too far in West London, but it was sold out super quickly. Members didn't even get a chance of getting a ticket. So, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Regardless, I think it's going to be a really entertaining game, really high scoring. I think, but it's going to be a good one for sure.
Yeah, because they're in good form. I think they've only lost to West Ham.
They beat West Ham, I think. Didn't they? They beat West Ham away from home.
I think they lost. I thought it was 1-0.
Wasn't that the game where they scored the last-minute winner away from home against West Ham?
I can't remember. I'd have to check. But I'm sure they've only lost one game this season, and I'm pretty sure for some weird reason, I'm sure it was West Ham, and I think it was Ben Rama. I'm sure Ben Rama scored.
They beat West Ham 2-1. Got it on my screen.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a last-minute winner from Wisa, 94th minute. But they lost to. Let me check who they lost to because I do remember.
Brighton. It was Brighton.
Brighton.
Yeah, it was Brighton. Apologies. Yeah, so they've only lost one game, and they're in form. I think they're 7th in the league. I think something like that. So it is going to be difficult. We've seen teams go there and struggle, and I say struggle. I mean, I'm comparing Arsenal, who aren't the best team at the moment, but I think it is going to be difficult. The fans will be behind them, like you mentioned as well. That they've got that sort of cohesion around the team. They're all playing for the manager as well. So it's going to be tough. And like I said earlier, we don't always have the best form after an international break. The only thing that does fill me with a bit of joy is that we've had a lot of players come back early, or they haven't been on international break, and they've got that sort of 7-day rest as well, which is good. But it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Let's do predictions. I'll let you go first.
Just because of the referee and the kind of, as you mentioned, the cohesion Brentford have at the moment, and it's a difficult place to go and play, get the 3 points. I'm going to say 2-2. It's going to be a high-scoring draw, I think. 2-2.
I can't. I'm always trying to be optimistic and confident, so I'm going to say 2-1 to Chelsea.
Okay.
I think we'll win. I think the fact it depends who he plays. I think as long as Lukaku plays in a 2 up front, I think we'll definitely win. I think if Lukaku's the sort of the number 9 up front on his own and he's not really getting the service, I think it could be a bit of a tricky game for us. So I do think if it is that, I can probably see a draw, or I can see Brentford winning. But it just depends on the team. I'm pretty sure I read earlier that I think Reece James might not be fit enough to start.
Okay.
So it might mean Aspilicueta on right wing back, which does worry me sometimes. I think obviously the legs and the speed that Brentford like to play it does worry me. But I'm going to go 2-1. I'm going to go 2-1
Yeah.
Chelsea. You know, I'm confident. I've got to be confident every game. So 2-1.
Yeah, you just mentioned Reece James not being fully fit, but I was about to say it could be the first game where we have a fully fit squad. Every single
Mm,
player is fit. But as you said, lineup will be very interesting because Loftus-Cheek's got no reason to be dropped after his performance against Southampton. Same
yeah.
with Werner. We've got Lukaku, which is our number 9, who should be starting every game. Then what you do with
Maybe
players like
maybe
Pulisic.
Pulisic as well. Yeah, if he
Pulisic's
comes
an
back in.
option. Ziyech as well, who didn't go with Morocco. I think he's had a falling out with their manager, so
Yeah,
he
yeah,
was back at Cobham. So yeah, lineup will be really really interesting. But as I always say, I'm confident Tuchel will pick the right lineup.
yeah. It's going to be key. Let's move on to the news that sort of broke early this week. Big smile on Theo's face if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. Mine isn't as optimistic as Theo, but we're talking about Eden Hazard on the brink of returning to Chelsea. I'm sure I read 12 million or 17 million, which when you think about it is it's kind of a bargain, but it isn't. It kind of stinks a little bit for me, if I'm honest. It's I'll get your thoughts first. What do you think about Hazard returning to Chelsea if it happens?
I feel like it's a rumor or a move that would be purely based on nostalgia. I think it's Roman. Roman's the main one. Roman Abramovich, the main one trying to drive the move if the rumors are true. And I think he's got all these amazing memories of Eden Hazard, the Prince of Stamford Bridge. So maybe that's why he wants to push for the move. Does the move make sense? No, it doesn't. He's not on form. He's struggling to find full fitness. We've got an abundance of quality and players that can play in that position. Likes of Hudson-Odoi, Pulisic, Ziyech, Werner, Havertz, all these amazing players. There's also rumours that Real might want Reece James as part of the deal, which I think would be the worst player to offer, in the deal. He's probably the player that we want to keep up for the next 10, 12 years until he retires, if anything. And but as a Chelsea fan, do I want to see Eden Hazard back at Stamford Bridge? Yes. So it's, after that interview in Baku, it was just like so emotional as a Chelsea fan, but you understood why he wanted to leave. It was a dream for him to be at Real Madrid to play under Zidane, who was the player he grew up watching. Now that Zidane's gone, he's struggling at Madrid. I don't think the fans like him particularly. I know that he's kind of getting he's got a lot of stick on Instagram in the comments. You can't really base it off social media, but he got a lot of stick on social media after that picture he posted when he played at Stamford Bridge back in May. But it's just one of those players, like he posted on Instagram, when I'm done at Real Madrid, I'll come back to Chelsea, when he left Chelsea. It's just a bit like Drogba. You just know there's one final farewell with him at Chelsea. I just still don't think the timing's right now. But if it's maybe he finds a bit of form, and then it's a bit like Drogba, he's on the verge of retiring. He knows that he's going to be playing a squad role, not really a starter role, then I'll happily take him back. But at the moment of the project we have at Chelsea, I don't think it makes sense, no. But I want to see him back at Chelsea, yes. So I'm very, very 50-50 on this one.
I think a lot of fans are. I think I sort of agree with you a little bit. I think, I'd love to see him back at Chelsea, but I think he's 30 now. I think he's 31 in January.
Mm-hmm.
So we know he's going to get, if he does sign, it's a 1 year with the option to extend contracts. It's, very Thiago Silva contract. And that's what Roman likes to do with anyone who's over 30. And I just think, I suppose we've got to think about the expectations of what we're expecting from Hazard. It's not going to be Eden Hazard that was tearing the Premier League apart, a few years ago. It's going to be Eden Hazard that has lost a bit of pace, or like you mentioned, is a squad player. And I just look at the squad players that we've got already. It's a bit unfair in my opinion for one of those players to lose out on game time or being loaned out somewhere because Eden Hazard comes back and plays a part in something, when we've got, like you mentioned, a really good, we've just mentioned a lot of players that we could even start against Brentford, Pulisic, Ziyech, even like a Mason Mount. There's loads of players, Werner, you could name any of those players, and you look at them and you think, well, do they, even our youth system, I look at the under-23s, there's players that I'd rather see come in first and play that squad role, as opposed to Eden Hazard coming back and playing. I just don't think, I think fans are looking at the Ronaldo situation. They've seen he's gone back there, and they see that, and even that hasn't been the best of moves so far. I mean, it started okay for him, but I just think the fans will be expecting Eden Hazard that was, tearing Spurs apart, that helped Leicester win the league, or the Coquelin sort of, pushing him and done the 360 and speed. And that isn't Eden Hazard. He's very much a 30-year-old player. He looks like, when I've watched him, he moves different. He's not as fast. And this isn't me being I'm not trying to criticize him to that point. Obviously, he's a world-class player, but I just think, is the move right? Not at all.
Yeah,
Not at all. I just don't think the move would make sense for us at the moment. I think there's players in the youth system that I'd rather see coming through first.
Conor Gallagher being one of them, I think.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. I just feel like, I think we spoke about this when there was that whole European Super League, almost on the verge of being created. It just feels like it'd be a very commercial and Americanized move. I feel you look at kind of how Ronaldo going back to United, the amount of kits they've sold, how they probably got God knows how many more fans from across the world now, and then it's kind of a bit like the Michael Jordan retiring, then going back to the Chicago Bulls in one last dance. Exactly, it's got that kind of like look to it as well. Eden Hazard gone for 3 years, comes back to Chelsea, sells a bunch of kits, plays quite averagely, but still, the fans still love him regardless of how he plays. So it's got that kind of like aspect to it as well, which I think maybe, Roman's probably got the dollar signs in his eyes when he sees that. So that's something to think about as well. But as a Chelsea fan, just seeing Hazard back at Stamford Bridge in a Chelsea kit would 100%. Be special. It would be special. 100%. Yeah.
And I'd love to see that. I just don't want it to be the expensive one of the players that are coming through now, or they get shipped out. Like you mentioned, is that another loan for Conor Gallagher next season because Eden Hazard's there? And yeah, I just look at it and I think if Eden Hazard was 28, 27, 28, 100%. But the fact he's 31 in 4 months, how much football is he honestly going to play? And we've mentioned his injuries since Real Madrid. He was relatively injured at times for Chelsea, but I mean that's intensified since he's gone to Real Madrid. So I just think, yes, obviously Chelsea fan, I want to see Eden Hazard come back, maybe just as an ambassador. I don't know, but as a player, I just don't want it to be at the cost of one of the players that are coming through, or even like a Pulisic. I look at him, he is for me very similar to Eden Hazard, the way that he plays his football. It's just they're getting injuries. So if we can keep Pulisic fit, I think we've already got someone who can do what Eden Hazard can do, and is nearly and a lot younger. He's almost 10 years younger. So yeah, I mean, let's see what happens. If it comes through, it happens. 17, 12 million. It's a bargain, obviously with wages on top. And like you said, we'll recoup a lot of that in terms of sponsorships and kit sales as well. So yeah, one last dance, I suppose, for Eden if he comes back, but not at the expense of any of the players coming through. If he's happy to warm the bench, we've got a spot for him.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
Let's move on. Kind of in the same context, really. Let's talk about something that you mentioned to me last week around some players that we regret selling or moving on, or not retaining, I suppose is the correct word. But to be honest, I wanted to do research for this, and I just haven't. I haven't done it purposely for a reason, but also I want to hear your thoughts as well around some of the players that we should have. It's a difficult one because we say we should have retained them, but in hindsight, some of them potentially may not have worked at Chelsea. But I want to hear some of your players that you regret that we sold or we moved on maybe too early in their career.
I think the three logical names that straight away come to mind are Salah, De Bruyne, and Lukaku. Back, I think, in 2013, 2014, that time period. Salah, I think, January 2015.
Yeah.
But it was actually quite interesting because I was reading an interview of Eddie Newton recently, how he said, back when Mourinho was manager, De Bruyne and Salah, yes, they were amazing players, but they weren't ready to be in the Chelsea squad yet. I saw it, both Mourinho saw it. And their body language was wrong. They weren't ready. And same with Lukaku, actually. He wasn't ready. He was losing the ball, apparently a lot in training. And Salah and De Bruyne kind of didn't have the right attitude, apparently, and they weren't really committed, and they wanted to leave themselves. They wanted to get game time, and at the time, you have to remember they were competing with the likes of Eden Hazard, Willian, all these quality players. So those are three definitely I regret. You look at what they've achieved. After leaving Chelsea, they had I think that to get to where they are now, you still have to remember Salah went through Fiorentina, Roma. De Bruyne went through, I think, Werder Bremen and maybe Wolfsburg. So it wasn't really, they kind of had to earn their way to get those moves to Liverpool and City. But now when you kind of think we could have had a front three of Lukaku, De Bruyne and Salah, it's crazy. I don't know if that's you blame Mourinho, if you blamed them for not having the right attitude when they were at Chelsea. But at least we managed to get Lukaku back now, which I think for 100 million, which in today's market is very, very reasonable, I think, for a player of his quality. Cheap, yeah. But I think the one that really, really hurt me when he left was Juan Mata.
Okay. You surprised me. I thought he was going to say someone else, but no. I agree with that. That one hurt because of where he went, though, I think.
Yeah, but also the season right before he was our player of the season. He was, he had countless goals and assists that year. I think he had over 20 assists in all competitions back in the 2012-2013 season. Mourinho comes in the summer to replace Benitez, spends half a season under Mourinho, and then something just didn't happen, click between the two. They didn't see eye to eye, which is typical Mourinho thing. It was Casillas at Real Madrid. It was Pogba at United. He always has that one player that he just always almost picks on.
He wants to make an example out of them for whatever reason, and it's at his own detriment as well.
Yeah, and it's always the player that's probably the fans' favourite as well. And at Chelsea, it was Juan Mata. And then in January, he's off. And just seeing that video of him in the helicopter landing in Manchester, I remember being back in school, and I was almost had tears in my eyes. And but yeah, that one really hurt me, I think, because as you said, it was the club he went to, and he's still done quite a lot at Manchester. He's still there now, so it's like. To think, had he stayed at Chelsea, and I still think he would have probably been a better player at Chelsea than he'd ever been at United, purely based on the players he would have been playing around, having chemistry with Hazard, linking up with players like Diego Costa, which he never got to play with. It's, but then maybe a player like that leaving paved the way for someone like Fabregas, someone like Pedro, who came later on. So I don't know, but it's one of the ones that hurt me the most. And then last one I'll mention quite more recently, I think Tomori's one still kind of hurts me, purely based on how well he's doing at AC Milan. He's back in the England squad now. We might be losing a couple of centre-backs this summer. So he's one that I think will regret it. Maybe not so much now, but come 3 or 4 years, we'll really, really regret it, I think.
Yeah, I think we will. I think we'll regret Tomori 100%. I think, defenders are hard to come by anyway. A good defender is hard to come by, and I think he's going to go up to that level of potential world class at some point. Going back to the three you mentioned, I look at Salah and Kevin De Bruyne, and I look at them, and I think it is partly their journey that they went on as to why they are where they are. I don't necessarily think if they'd stayed at Chelsea, 100% they'd be the quality that they are, and I think that's only because of the fact that. Chelsea was at that time was a club that were happy to just loan out players and didn't really give players opportunity, and that's probably because of the players that were ahead of them at the time as well. Like you mentioned all those players before, and I remember watching Salah for Chelsea, and he was nowhere near as good as what he is now. Same with Kevin De Bruyne I think he had 2 bad injuries, didn't he? I think it was.
Pre-season 2013, he had a really bad one. I think it was like a weird game against the Malaysia 11s or something like that.
I'm sure it was like a cruciate or something. It was a long-term injury. So I think that just hindered his progression at Chelsea anyway. I don't think he was ever going to get back into the team at that point. But I agree with you. I think they've obviously gone on to be world-class players, and at front three of them, Lukaku included, would have been world beaters. No one would have been able to beat us for a couple of seasons. But it hurts. I think it hurts me more, especially Mo Salah. I think just because of looking at him now, he would fit straight into our team the way that he plays now, and the progression that he's made over the time at Fiorentina and Roma as well. He's definitely come on a lot. Kevin De Bruyne has as well, but I just think the way we play, he would slot right into Chelsea at the moment. It's a shame that we didn't keep him, and I do think Mourinho has to take a lot of the blame for that as well, to some aspects. as you mentioned, is it their attitude? But then I think at the same time as well, you could probably say that about 70% of the players at that point, or even now, some players just don't have the right attitude at times. But if you nurture that, and that's what Mourinho doesn't really do well. He doesn't nurture talent, I suppose, as well as he could do. And I think he's never done that at any club. He doesn't bring through young players. He's never really been a manager that wants to look at the youth setup, or he just wants a team where he can go and spend money, bring in play. I mean, it's obviously changed now. I'm talking of Mourinho at Chelsea and his Inter days, and even at United, he didn't bring anyone through then as such. So he's never been a manager that brings through youth. So it was never going to work for him as bringing through a Mo Salah or a Kevin De Bruyne or anyone of that caliber. One that does hurt me, and technically we didn't sell him, but I think it's where he went to, and I thought this is who you was going to say, is Frank Lampard when he went to Man City.
Yeah, that's I forgot about that one.
Yeah, and I think the only reason it hurt me is because I think he scored against us.
He
Didn't
scored.
He
scored. He just didn't celebrate.
He didn't celebrate. Yeah,
that's a good
that
shot.
one
Actually,
really hurt me, and I think only because of the fact that I really think we should have. I think it was 2014. I think so. I think we should have kept him maybe for one season.
He had one more year in him, and he was scoring for City that year as well. So it's like he's still able to do it in the Prem. But that hurt actually. That really hurt.
Yeah, that was the worst one, I think, for me. Just because I wanted him to stay, and I think there was talks at the time that he was going to stay, and I think it was just the contract talks broke down. I don't know whether it was that sort of 1 year contract thing or he wanted 2 years. I think, if memory stands right, I think that's what it was. The fact he wanted 2 years, but we was only going to offer him the one. And I think City, obviously, he played for Man City and then went to New York City after that as well.
He went to New York and was loaned to Man City, I think. So I don't think he knew he was going to Man City when he signed for New York. So it's almost like out of his...
Yeah. So that one really hurt. I think that was up there as the big one for me. I think Lampard, you mentioned Juan Mata. To be fair, he wasn't even in my mind, but that one definitely hurt because it's United. But I don't really, I looked back, I think when you mentioned it last week, and I was trying to think of any big ones. And I think the three that you mentioned, including Juan Mata as well, and obviously we've got Lukaku back, but I think those were like the main ones that stood out for me. I don't really remember any sort of major ones where I think, we've had loads of players that have come through the doors at Chelsea, but I think I was a bit gutted when we lost Oscar, to be fair.
Yeah, but the money was good. The money was very good for him at the time. Yeah.
The money was good. And to be honest, it's not like we missed him as well, to an extent, if that makes sense. But I just remember I liked him as a player and I think he was brilliant. So I do remember that was a big one for me. But Frank Lampard's was the worst. I just remember thinking, this is big now. Because I still necessarily don't think, and I don't think you can, I don't think you can ever replace a Frank Lampard. Just like you can't replace a John Terry. And I think when Diego Costa went as well, that was a big one for me.
Yeah, that hurt us. We didn't fully replace him with Morata, I felt. And same with Lampard. You can't replace a box-to-box midfielder like Frank Lampard. We got Fabregas in that summer, but I still feel like they're very different players, the two of them. So, but some honourable mentions I wanted to say. Again, I think not so much what happened after they left Chelsea, but more the club they went to. Petr Cech to Arsenal, that hurt.
Yes,
I felt.
Big one.
Yeah, David Luiz to Arsenal as well, just based on like how he left on, I think, the final day, and he just signed a new contract, and Arsenal fans were going crazy on Twitter. Kind of hurt, even though he didn't really do much there, and he almost still kind of played for Chelsea of the way he was getting himself sent off and making mistakes. So I think two other ones that kind of maybe would have forgotten about, but I think Ian Robben, given the career he had after he left Chelsea, not so much at Real Madrid, but more at Bayern Munich. If we had a player like that at Chelsea, even in his early 30s, would have been a huge asset to us. And then Joe Cole to Liverpool, swap deal for Yossi Benayoun. I think that kind of hurt me as well. Yeah,
we got the shit into this stick, I think.
We did.
Yossi Benayoun was all right. He was all right, but he wasn't a Joe Cole, and he wasn't. We should have retained him. We should have kept Joe Cole.
He had at least a couple more years in him. I think he got injured quite often at Liverpool, but he had a couple more years in him at Chelsea, and one of those players that was there during the Mourinho era and still had, something to offer. And he still lives in Chelsea, he lives around the corner from my house. And I still see him. And I saw him by Battersea Bridge the other day, and his kids are all in Chelsea kits. So he's still a huge Chelsea fan. And and you saw how he reacted in Porto and back in May. Yeah. So a player that I have a lot of respect for as well. But I think we would have cut maybe Tammy. I think that's another one we'll regret in a few years potentially. But
Yeah, I think so. I think more Tamori than Tammy, but
mm,
I think there's enough number nines that are kind of coming around. They come around every now and again, and if you pay the fee for them, I just think centre backs are very good. Centre backs are they're like
mm,
gold. You know, you find one, you keep it because it's just. But I agree. I think Tammy's doing really well for Roma. I don't know whether that's because he's playing with Mourinho. If Mourinho was to leave, I don't know whether someone else comes in and he has that impact with them. So I put a lot of that down to the fact he knows Jose. He knows they've got that relationship there.
mm.
Because I think I did see parts of the game when Tammy came on yesterday actually against Hungary, and it was like the old Tammy. It was it was the old Tammy that we know at Chelsea. So I don't know whether it's just
Bambi on
you know
us.
yeah, I just don't know if it's because Mourinho's there, but yeah, that one shocked me a little bit. To be fair, I
Mm,
didn't think he was going to go there, but because I know there was talk of him staying in England, but it's worked out for him. He's doing really well. But I think the Tamori one, I think you've hit the nail on
mm,
the head with Tamori. I think that's the big one for us.
yeah.
But yeah, I think Mo Salah, I think would have fitted in. Kevin De Bruyne, I'm not 100% sure about. I know he's a world class player. Before anyone shoots me down, who's listening, but I think I don't know. I just don't think. I don't know if he would have fit into the way we play. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I like to think just every player's career path shapes them to be the player they are now. And maybe
Yeah.
had he stayed at Chelsea, he wasn't he did hardly play. To be fair, I think he played in the opening game against Hull. I think that season
Mm,
played a Champions League game maybe against Schalke or Steaua Bucharest, something like that. And he was decent, but he's nowhere near the player he is now. Same with
mm,
Salah. And as I mentioned, those trips to Germany and Italy kind of shaped them to be the players they are today.
yeah.
And last mention, I think we should talk about Nemanja Matic to United. I think we got
Yeah. That one
Bakayoko
actually
to
did hurt.
replace him, and it just didn't
Yeah.
really. Yeah, I felt like seeing him at United, and he just deleted all of his Chelsea pictures on Instagram and all that. Was a bit like, "Ooh, this is
Yeah.
hurting.
That one.
This is hurting."
Yeah.
Yeah,
That did hurt actually. I think again it goes back to where did they go? If he'd gone
yeah,
to, somewhere in France or Germany, he wouldn't really. But I mean, going to United or Arsenal, I think Arsenal are the ones that really
mm.
hurt me. Yeah, that one hurt.
Retirement home. Arsenal, I feel like is for Chelsea players. Yeah,
Kudachini going to
Coutinho to
Spurs.
Spurs. Yeah, one of the rare
Now
players
you
that does
mention
that.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one hurt. He was one of my idols growing up. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I don't think did we sell him or did he go on a free? I can't remember.
I'm not sure. I think he might have gone on a free or very low
Mm,
money,
yeah.
but yeah,
The
Lampard
only bit
scoring
of
past him at Wembley was a nice moment though.
yeah. Speaking of before we wrap up, because I know we've sort of overrun a bit, but Newcastle, Frank Lampard, can you see it
Mm.
happening?
I can in a way. I think I just saw that Giroud was in touch with Lampard this week, almost pushing him to go to Newcastle. I think I might have
Right.
seen that on Twitter, and he said it's a perfect club for you. You should go. You should. So if he gets the players he wants, I think he'll do a fantastic job, not just with players he brings in, but players he promotes from the youth teams. So
Mm.
it could be an interesting move for him. I'm not sure how much Christine Bleakley would like to live up north in Newcastle, though, because I know she's very settled in her London lifestyle.
I think she'll stay down south. To be
Yeah,
fair.
she'll stay down south. But just seeing Lampard back in the Prem would be nice. Just
Yeah.
wherever he goes, I'll be happy for him.
I think it's a good move for him.
Mm,
I think depending on what Newcastle want to do, whether they want to bring in when I say a big name, I mean like an Antonio Conte or someone of that level, or they want to bring in a manager to steady the ship and make a bit more of experience, get his name out there, which is what Frank Lampard needs. He needs a club where he can kind of spend money, which he will at Newcastle, get another big tick on his CV with Derby and Chelsea, and it gives him a bit more experience as well. I think that'd be a good place to go and do that transitional sort of, get rid of the deadwood at Newcastle and bring in some big names. I think I've heard Lacazette is on the list to go there, which I think is that sort of transitional period. They bring in a few big names that are proven in. Eden Hazard, he could go to
mm,
Newcastle. He'd work really well there. I think that's
yeah,
sort of, the Frank Lampard link up there if that happens. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think if he gets there, I think Brendan Rodgers has been tipped as well, one of the favourites to go.
Ragnick, I think
Yeah,
the former Leipzig and Schalke
I
guy.
think he's top, isn't he? I think he's a
Yeah,
favourite.
And then I
Yeah.
think I saw Graham Potter's on the list too. It's going to be interesting. I think January we might see some players coming in, but I think next summer's the real
It's
kind
the
of
big one. Yeah.
big project for Newcastle, and Coutinho, Jovic, those type of players' names have been
Yeah.
linked as well. So
Yeah.
just as a football fan, it's kind of exciting to see this kind of rebuilding of a club. But
Yeah.
it's going to be quite
They
scary if
deserve it.
they deserve it, but it's going to be scary if they actually do become a European heavyweight again.
So we've got Roman. Roman's in our
we've got
corner.
Roman. We've got
He'll get
Roman.
the
Yeah,
blank checkbook and he'll let Tuchel spend whatever he wants as long as we win trophies. So
exactly.
so yeah, let's see what happens there. But yeah, again, I'll mention them again. I mentioned them at the start of the episode. Follow us on Twitter at From the Shed End, on Instagram at From the Shed End _ between each of the words, and make sure you like, subscribe if you haven't already on YouTube. I think we're close to 500 followers on Twitter. I think we've surpassed 1,000 on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
1,500, something like that. We'll do some kind of giveaway or competition at 2,000. I want to
Yeah,
do that.
definitely,
It'll be fun. Yeah.
definitely. And I think on YouTube, we're slacking. We need some subscribers. So if you're listening, you've got a YouTube account, just give us some love on there and comment as well. If you you listen to the episode, comment and let us know your thoughts as well. But this has been episode 29 with myself, T Dot, and Theo. Thank you for listening. And until next time, hopefully we get our victory as well. Brentford 2-1, not
2-2.
2-2.
No, 2-1. 2-1. Let's do 2-1.
Let's go 2-1. Anthony Taylor gives us a penalty and sends one of the Brentford players off. That'd be nice as well. But until next time, episode 30. Yeah, we'll be back next week for episode 30. Thanks for listening.